All right, folks. Now I'm going to explain the new informed consent to designated agency form. There's one for the buyer, one for the seller, one for the tenant, one for the landlord as well. I want to go through this one. This is the buyer form and explain this one so you have an understanding about designated agency and this form that you need to get signed. Very similar to informed consent to dual agency. Now, informed consent to designated agency. Again, this comes up on the buyer side. If you are looking at a property or buyer's interested in a property listed at prime and one of the clients does not want dual agency, then designated agency could go into effect. Excuse me. So you fill in the address up at the top. The buyer and seller represented by a real estate licensee or licensees from the same brokerage firm in the same real estate transaction. New Jersey law permits the buyer and seller to be represented by designated agents from the same brokerage firm. Designated agency occurs when a broker appoints/designates different licensees within the same brokerage firm to represent two different parties. One licensee to represent the buyer as buyer's designated agent and a different licensee to represent the seller as seller's designated agent in the same transaction. So these are two agents internally of prime representing parties in the same real estate transaction. If designated agency applies, you are not a dual agent, you are a designated agent. Now, each designated agent has legal obligations called fiduciary duties to the party the agent represents and must act in the best interest of that party throughout the real estate transaction. A buyer's designated agent has a duty to advocate and conduct negotiations on behalf of the buyer. A seller's designated agent has a duty to advocate and conduct negotiations on behalf of the seller. That's the key difference there, folks, between designated agency and dual agency. You cannot negotiate on either side in dual agency. You can't negotiate and try and gain and help one party gain an edge over the other as a dual agent. When designated agency applies, the buyer's agent can conduct negotiations on behalf of the buyer, and the seller's designated agent can conduct negotiations on behalf of the seller. That is the key difference there. Understand that everyone has fiduciary obligations to each party. I want you to understand, too, the next paragraph here. In the context of designated agency, the designating broker, that's me, oversees the transaction and acts as a dual agent for buyer and seller. Designating broker, that's me, remains neutral about any conflicts of interest between the buyer and seller and maintains confidentiality and may not advocate or negotiate on behalf of a buyer or seller to the disadvantage of the other. Instead, the designated broker supervises the agents. I will supervise the designated agents to assure each designated agent is maintaining the agent's full range of fiduciary duties, which are ordinarily owed by a licensee who represents solely the buyer as a buyer's agent and by a licensee who represents solely the seller as a seller's agent. So the designated broker, that's me, I am a dual agent and cannot help one party gain an edge over the other. I am impartial, but you as a designated agent for the transaction, for the client, for the brokerage, will represent your party fully, and you can negotiate on behalf of that party. A licensee may legally act as a designated agent for a party only with this form signed, the informed consent. A broker may legally act as a designated broker and dual agent for party only with this form signed. So if there is going to be designated agency, this form has to be signed. Again, it's very similar to the dual agency form. You get it signed as a part of your presentation, that is part of your packet. So it's there if that opportunity arises. Now, you'd have to explain it to them, the difference between dual agency and designated agency. And again, I touched on this in another video. If you have a listing and you have a party that is represented by another agent in prime, or it's your buyer, and that party does not want dual agency, designated agency will come into play. If you have the seller and buyer, then you would need to connect with another agent in prime to see if they will take that party from beginning to end, help represent them as a designated agent, and you can collect a referral fee. You work out whatever agreement that you want with the other agent you're assigning it to. Again, I understand it has an impact on your bank account, but we also have to advocate for our clients. So that is designated agency explained. It is not that complicated. Do not overcomplicate it. You have to understand exactly what it is so you can explain it to your client, and then you have them go through and you sign this as well. Send it to me to sign, put in the firm, your name there, buyers, designated broker, designated agent. I will sign that as well, and you will sign it as the agent. So again, don't overcomplicate designated agency. Let me know if you have any questions on it, but hopefully this helps you understand the form and designated agency a little bit better. All right. Thanks, guys.